please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's pangram.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and this is episode number 2 of our new Academic Integrity series. And along with me for the ride, as always, will be Bradley Emmy, CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Elvin. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. So this is episode number 2 for you, yeah? How was number 1?
Number 1 was great. I mean, we had a great guest. We had a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Looking forward to our guest today. So let's bring him in right away. He is Dr. John Woods, and he is the professor and chief academic officer at the University of Phoenix. John, how you doing?
I'm great. How you doing today, Alvin?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your time. So we like to just jump right in and get going. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how do you do it?
Oh, geez. AI is a big driver right now in terms of academic integrity, and it's been about a year and a half since we wrote a philosophy statement on AI that we added to our academic integrity policy documents. And from that philosophy statement, we also added some policy guidance and done a whole bunch of faculty training. So it's an evolving situation, as we all know. AI is changing so rapidly. We anticipate this is a policy we're going to have to refresh pretty frequently.
Yeah. And I worked in higher ed for over 20 plus years. It's not easy to do that. It's very bureaucratic. Everybody wants to be a part of it. It takes a long time. So you mentioned your philosophy statement on AI. So why don't we start with a question we're going to ask everyone on the podcast? And the question is, how do you define academic integrity?
So for us, academic integrity, I guess, defined is that the student, number one, is the individual who did the work that they got credit for. And I guess number two, it's how they did that work so that it was done with integrity, with honesty, with an ethical approach. If you want to boil it down, I think it's essentially those two things. It's who did it and how.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks for that definition. I appreciate that. So I know, Bradley, you have some questions. Over on to you.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just start off with how does academic integrity look different for a University of Phoenix? Which is quite different than the vast majority of the educational institutions, higher ed institutions we have out there. We have mostly adult learners, working learners, online learners. Like, kind of, what are kind of the differences, would you say, in kind of how your university looks at academic integrity versus your peers?
Yeah, I think the items you highlight there are significant. We are fully online, and we have a small campus in Phoenix, but ostensibly we are a fully online asynchronous university. And we've got to pay attention for academic integrity purposes. We've got to pay attention to everything from how courses are designed and the assessments that are built into those courses, what sort of assessment methods we use. We've even got to look at IP addresses to make sure they jive correctly with the information we have on file. And so we're pulling a lot of information routinely from our learning management system to make sure that the people who are at the other end of the line on the computer doing the work are actually the people who are enrolled in our programs. And it extends to plagiarism checkers and things that our faculty are trained to do in the courses. But it's complex, and AI is making it even more complex. That's for sure.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on kind of two things, and definitely want to get into both of them. So we have kind of the course design aspect, and we also have kind of the assessment security aspect. So definitely want to get into both of those, but maybe we can start kind of on the course design front. How do you provide guidance to your instructors on kind of designing courses that work in kind of these online settings, where now also, these generative AI chatbots are widely available, at the touch of a finger, to your students?
Yeah. So in our case, the faculty are the subject matter experts. They're not the designers. So we've got a standardized curriculum and a team that creates the courses from an instructional design and development perspective, with the faculty as the partners, really, as subject matter experts in their fields or disciplines. From a design and development perspective, not only for reasons of academic integrity, but for a whole host of other reasons, our courses are developed with a lot of different types of assessment in mind. And so you wouldn't see a course, for instance, at the University of Phoenix that a student would complete the whole thing and then have a final exam worth 100%. That number one would lend itself more to cheating, a high stakes exam worth the whole shebang. And secondly, it probably wouldn't do the students much of a service in terms of the things we're able to do by varying our assessment methods so that different kinds of learners have different opportunities to be successful. And so from a design perspective, you'd find University of Phoenix courses have multiple types of assessments within them. We would have a lot of smaller assessments. We have key assessments that map to the skills that we have in our courses that we expect students to master. And I think you'd find that we also try to have students draw upon their personal and professional experience in the context of the material. So we're asking them questions where they're really required to apply what they're learning to real situations in their real life. And while you could probably train AI with very careful prompting to do that, it's a little bit more difficult when you're asking people to talk about their thoughts and feelings and real experiences in the context of the academic content that you're hoping they will learn and master.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult to. I've tried to ask an AI chatbot about its feelings and thoughts and reflecting on it, and it never goes well. So
Right.
it's a great strategy.
Yeah, and I think as relates to generative AI, what we've I think tried to do as a university is explain and teach our students that generative AI gives workers a tool set that can ultimately have the potential to make them more productive and can help in their everyday life and their work lives. But it needs to be used in a certain way and used responsibly, and for it to be, I think, effective. The students have to have a roadmap of proper use. So one of the things, in addition to having a philosophy statement and then our policy statement, one of the other things that we found really useful was creating an elective course available to all of our students on everyday use of AI. The first couple of weeks actually delve into proper and ethical use before introducing students to a number of different AI tools. So that's an elective we've had in place now for several months. And I think offering that to students early in their time will probably go a long way to helping them understand use of generative AI is totally in bounds, but it needs to be done correctly and ethically.
That's fantastic. So, are there any assessments at the University of Phoenix where use of ChatGPT or other large language models actually is allowed? And if so, kind of like where is kind of the line between acceptable and unacceptable use?
Yeah, in fact, a student could use generative AI anywhere, so long as they explain how they did so. So they can use it as a thought starter for writing a paper. When we have students explain the writing process that they walk through, they can say, "I used generative AI. I got these ideas, and then I went and did my research." So it's not discouraged in any context, in any course, in any assignment. Rather, we recognize that it's a tool, and if students use it correctly, use it well, it can be super helpful. In fact, it's not that different than, we'll say, old days. the olden days when someone would use Wikipedia to get a good start on their research. We wouldn't expect students to lean on Wikipedia for the entire writing process, but it might be the place where they start the writing process to get ideas, not unlike just the search window in a Google homepage could be the starting place or the jumping off place for some research a student might do. So it's not discouraged in any context, but we go to great lengths to teach students, I think, and the faculty do this on the front lines to teach students how to use generative AI. We've got 800 plus faculty who've completed a workshop and learned some methods and strategies and techniques for teaching students, how they can and how they should not use generative AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, so important because I think University of Phoenix is all about, preparing students for the workforce. And, I think that's going to be an essential part of any kind of knowledge work that's going to be done in the future, like being able to leverage these incredible resources that we now have at our disposal.
Yeah, for sure. Another initiative to your point that we've got going on right now is all of our deans are figuring out in the curriculum maps they have for the programs that fall within their colleges, where it might be appropriate to teach discipline-specific utility from generative AI. So rather than AI in a vacuum or AI kind of separate from the disciplines, how might generative AI tools work in certain fields or disciplines? We did this with the first place we've done this is we've mapped out one of our degrees entirely. It's an environmental science bachelor's degree, and we've looked at actual tools in use in the field of environmental science. And we've looked at where we should introduce those tools in various courses to students, what the utility or the applications would be, and we think when we revise that program and sort of unleash this on the world, students are going to learn to use AI in context. And I think rather than a degree or a set of courses all about AI, it's probably more helpful if we see AI in a specific set of discipline based contexts. So we'll do that eventually, probably with all our programs, and you would expect that as students go through any program that there would be opportunities to learn tools that are used in, like you said, in the workplace in that field.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into something you said earlier about how you kind of teach students okay, here are the correct ways to use generative AI to augment your learning, and here are kind of the incorrect ways to use generative AI. We kind of talk about this distinction between augmenting learning versus bypassing learning, and how ChatGPT can be used for both. Like you can use it to be really helpful to you, or you can use it to just bypass any kind of learning that you might see. So, in your classes, how when a student decides to use ChatGPT incorrectly to bypass the learning instead of using it to augment their learning, I guess maybe two-part question. So one, how do you figure out that that's been the case? And then two, how do you kind of turn that around into a teaching moment? And kind of what kind of guidance is then given to the student?
Yeah. Maybe starting with the second part of that, I think the AI detectors still have some issues, implicit bias. And so while I think folks are in kind of an arms race of sorts to come up with the perfect detector, I don't think the perfect detector exists. And our stance is that even when the perfect detector comes into existence, there'll be a way around the perfect detector. I think that you might not be able to keep pace with what's happening with generative AI from a detection perspective. So stating that first off, I think it's apparent to an instructor. And again, having put nearly 1,000 instructors through this workshop, we have a 3-day workshop teaching them things to look for. And we can run a piece of student work through a detector and get some sense or idea, even if it might not be perfect. We also, I think, teach our faculty to listen for the student voice in the writing and see if what's been submitted is some sort of departure from the voice they've seen in their other work, and particularly in a more informal setting like discussion board areas. And when that voice shifts so dramatically, it might call for, as you said, some kind of coaching moment. And I guess that's where I go next, which is when a faculty member suspects that a generative AI has been used and used improperly, we use it as an opportunity for coaching. And that coaching is, I would say, context is important. You have students who are in their first class as an undergraduate, and you have students who are in their last class in a master's program. And so the coaching is, context specific. It might be that a student needs to understand what's appropriate and what's not. And it might be that a student should well know already what's appropriate and what's right. So the coaching is situation specific. We give, generally speaking, let's just say in the example of a student who's brand new, who's leaned on AI in a way that is probably inappropriate, they're going to get some coaching and they're going to get an opportunity to correct. They're going to be spoken to by that faculty member about the ways they can use AI and use it not only helpfully, but ethically. And in given the opportunities like that, we find most students will, well, I guess it would straighten up and fly right. But we find that students would take that advice, take that coaching, and do the right thing. And, like any thing in this world, we do have people who don't. And we have, there are ramifications for people who don't do the right thing. And so the faculty member ultimately can submit a ticket to our team that will investigate academic integrity issues. And penalties can be applied from, zeros on assignments all the way up to, just like in dramatic repeat cases of plagiarism, all the way up to expulsion.
Yeah. Hold on, Brad. I want to just jump in real quick. So you use the word coaching a lot, and I'm very curious to know why you're using that word coaching. Is that part of that philosophy statement? That it's just interesting that you're using that word in a higher education context.
Yeah. So I would say the general philosophy, it's a page long, but the general philosophy is that AI can be helpful. AI can be used in a way that is ethical as well as unethical. And it's our responsibility to teach the proper use of AI so that in an academic setting, that's learned and transferable to a work setting. You could get just as much trouble these days using AI if you work in a marketing department. You end up, plagiarizing somebody else's work on the marketing collateral you've created inadvertently or intentionally. So for us, the coaching is that this is still new enough for folks that it's our responsibility, of course, as a university with students to teach. Teach, coach, we think are sort of interoperable in this sense of the word. We're hopeful that the guidance, coaching, teaching we give makes them a successful student, but also a better worker. So this is no different than the guidance we would give if somebody used Wikipedia too heavily or didn't cite their work at all. Or use sources that were all 30 years old, talking about an issue that had a lot of more recent developments. All these sorts of things are opportunities for feedback, coaching, teaching.
And do you find that students are generally receptive to that feedback? Or we talked to Dr. Bertram Gallant last week, and, she was kind of saying it's about a 60-40 split between students that are kind of receptive versus students that push back and are like, I did not use AI. This is not this false accusation. Kind of what does that kind of like breakdown look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think students are generally fairly receptive to the approach we take. And I attribute that to two things. One is that people, by and large, want to do the right thing. There's way more people who want to do the right thing than the wrong thing, or society would be a bit of a mess. And two, that approach that we take, I think, lends itself more towards students being receptive, which is, along the lines of, I'll be paraphrasing here, but along the lines of, it's okay to use generative AI. It can be a great tool. I believe you use generative AI in some way, shape, or form with your submission. I want to work with you to figure out how I can help you to use generative AI in a way that is helpful, but also responsible, ethical, and appropriate in an academic setting. And it's fair game. It's a great tool, and I want to help you to use the tools properly so that you're not in trouble here and you don't get in trouble at work using them improperly. That's my job. My role is to help you. So if you come at it from that angle, and again in the context of, we'll call it a first offense, but in the context of that I've just described, most people are be like, whether they were intentional or unintentional, I think most people would be like, okay, all right, yeah, you're telling me I can use it? Cool.
Yeah.
Help me figure out how I can use it, and do so in a way that meets the requirements. Most people would be thrilled that somebody's teaching them how to use this thing, and not trying to ring them up and throw the book at them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So are you kind of saying that, like, basically, like, when you say it's fair game, is this like, kind of universal, or is it more kind of assignment specific?
I universally, I would say there is a way that somebody could use generative AI in just about any setting, any kind of assessment, assignment, and there's a way they could use it appropriately and inappropriately. We haven't led off every course by saying do all your work using generative AI as a starter.
Of course.
Yeah, we're not in that position, but we're also not in the position of being naive that none of our things, in fact, we suspect all of our things and everybody's things could be done with an AI assist, and that there might be ways we can help that to be done properly versus improperly. Grammarly is no different. You can use Grammarly to write a paper today, and Grammarly's been around for a long time. So all the Microsoft Office suite has generative AI built into it. Canva, if I'm asking people to do presentations, has an AI co-pilot built into it. So I think, again, that the difference at one end of the spectrum is naivete, that it's we've built things that are AI proof, and it'll never get used in some of these pieces of assessment. I think that's naive. At the other end of the spectrum, believing there's probably a likelihood that AI, generative AI, could be used to help somebody with every kind of assignment. How do we help people do it properly?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to go back to is the philosophy statement, because I think that's pretty progressive that you all came up with that. So talk us about the genesis of that philosophy statement. When was this? Why was it? Who was pushing this? All that good stuff. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think as sort of a backdrop to policy, we had to kind of first put a stake in the ground and say what our beliefs were around this, at the time, kind of new thing.
Yeah.
I can still remember, the news around kind of the December, January timeframe a couple of years ago, news hitting that GPT had done X, Y, and Z, and not many people knew about it yet, but now fast forward year and a half later, everybody does.
Yeah.
We had to kind of, like I said, put a stake in the ground and say, here's what we believe, and policy should then match, right? And what we believe was came out in the form of this philosophy statement that we put out there that said AI can be a super helpful tool in any context. We believe that we should encourage faculty, staff, and students to familiarize themselves with AI and to understand its proper and improper kinds of use. We believe that when we look at this, we have to be able to understand and appreciate that it's going to evolve. And we'll probably need an evolution of our philosophy and an evolution of our policies as the situation with AI evolves. We believe that as an institution, we should stay current on that evolution. We should periodically review and refresh our philosophy and our policy. We think that we should kind of take the view that as a university that is dedicated to helping people improve their prospects in their careers, we should try and understand how AI can do that, as I said, in a context, not in a vacuum. How can AI be useful in a career context, in specific discipline contexts? So that all kind of guided us to say, all right, if that's the philosophy or the beliefs that we hold about this, where should we go with policy?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And again, I think that was really ahead of your time and then the industry and higher education in general, the putting that out there. And I like the fact that you have that elective course, which I'm curious, when is that going to be a required course?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
It's a few things on the curriculum side. The elective is only a few months old now, but
Okay. So, yeah.
it can be taken. Our courses all for undergraduates run. There's a start every month, and the courses are 5 weeks in length. So that course will be offered, many times a year with many sections, and it can be put in anybody's bachelor's degree. That's thing one. Thing two, I mentioned the mapping of AI tools into a program at the course level to be specific to a field of study or a discipline or an area of employment. That's taking place now. And I think on the curriculum side, thing three is, what about the early courses that students take who have very little college experience? We have an onboarding sequence we call the Phoenix Success Series. And those courses really help students understand how to navigate being a student. And one course in particular that most of our students take first, we'll be embedding something in that course that teaches students our philosophy and our policies around generative AI. So all that kind of happening in the curriculum is, I think, a really a good start. And we continue, as I said, to kind of monitor where this is going and benchmark what other folks are doing. And if you talk to me in a year, I'd probably have a whole bunch more to share with you, because it's really gonna have to be something we keep on top of for sure.
Yeah, and it's moving so fast. One of the things that you mentioned that I'm very curious to learn more about is that workshop. Was that internal? Was that outsourced? Talk to us about that workshop. That's really interesting.
Yeah, internally, we've got a great team in what we call our Faculty Resource Center, and they probably make between 100 and 150 different types of faculty development opportunities available annually.
Wow.
New ones. These range from self-paced workshops to facilitated workshops to webinars to actual courses to infographics. And that team just puts out incredible work, and they put together this three segments, 3 units, a workshop on generative AI from a teaching and learning perspective, so that our faculty could be better at understanding it themselves, playing with some of the tools themselves, and develop a set of strategies for spotting and dealing with the use of generative AI in the courses they're teaching. As I said before, all the way up to approaches to take with students that help with the coaching we've talked about here.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Bradley, over to you. The last question. You have any last questions, Bradley? Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe one more is, I'm totally on your side with, I believe that people can be trained to spot AI by eye, especially when they have like, the context of the student's previous work, the context of the writing level of the student. On your side, at least for writing, but kind of for math and science, a lot of times, like, in math, for example, it's like, what is the integral of like, 1/root x squared plus one? Like there kind of is one solution. And actually the AI answer and the AI process is kind of almost indistinguishable from the human process, even for the best AI detector, best possible AI detector that could exist, right? So kind of like in these kind of like more like STEM subjects where kind of there's less creativity and voice and style, like I guess like kind of like how do instructors kind of navigate, teaching the students these fundamental skills, that rely without the use of generative AI to do it for them.
Yeah, that's definitely a trickier area. For us, we probably deal with it a bit less. We're not a STEM school, really. We have some required math courses, but no math degree.
Yep.
And so it's probably from my perspective something we deal with less. Let's just say that we have a couple required math courses that are a really low level undergraduate math, and so from a volume perspective, it's just a lot lower. And I think those folks that are charged with leading math for us are tackling this issue and working on it. I think it's I guess the best thing I can tell you about it is asking people to show their work and describe their process is probably what you're going to see more of because it's not any different than the fanciest calculator I have. I can do what you just said and get the answer, and that wasn't AI generated. But understanding, what I'm supposed to do and why I'm supposed to do that to get to that answer, kind of explaining and showing my work is probably where I think most people go. As I said, smaller problem for us, but that's probably where we end up. We've got somebody leading math who's talking about this a lot, just like you did, and I think we'll have more work done in this area moving forward than we do today, but on the two courses that we require for our undergraduates. But it's a bigger issue for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I think proof of process is definitely something that is talked about widely in academic integrity.
Mhm.
I think that's something that can be universally applied regardless of the discipline.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say that this has been a great conversation, John. I really appreciate it. And we're going to jump at the last two questions. So, is there anything that we did not cover that you wanted to talk about? University of Phoenix, academic integrity, anything you got coming up, anything you want to plug, and anything you want to talk about? That's number one. And number two, we're asking everyone the same question. It is, what do you see as the future of academic integrity?
Yeah. In these areas kind of all around generative AI and academics, something that we didn't touch on is, related to how we can do a better job as an institution leveraging AI ourselves.
Mm.
So I believe, and we're working on this, I believe that we'll be able to more quickly generate course content leveraging AI. Again, responsibly, ethically, and honoring copyright. I believe that we will be able to generate, tutorial information for students, um, uh, practice tests for students, more authentic assessments for students, revised courses more frequently for students, all using some generative AI tools in our curriculum design and development shop. So I think that's an opportunity for us for sure that we envision and see taking hold in the future. And then I think leveraging AI as well to analyze student data, student performance data to more proactively help students. So we've talked about, wouldn't it be great if every student had a co-pilot who was their private tutor? I think that's within reach. If you trained a generative AI model on all the course materials and the faculty member couldn't be available 24/7 live for a chat, but the bot could, and the bot was empathetic, which can happen. And if the bot was trained on all the course materials, you get somebody who's doing their work in the middle of the night when the faculty member's asleep, but the student's still getting help. And think about that Socratic one-to-one method, where that student who's getting help is known. Not only is the content known, but the student's capabilities and the student's work is known by the bot. There's huge potential there. It's like the promise of 24/7 live instruction, and we all know people need to sleep, but bots don't. So I think that's really, really promising as well. And I look, forward, whether it's a year or 2 years, and that might become pretty common in our space.
So if that, just to follow up real quick, so if that's common, what do you see as the future of academic integrity? So you think that it won't even be an issue in the future?
Well, I think you have obviously continue to have ethical challenges moving forward, but you still require people to, proof of process, as Bradley said. Yeah. You can require people to do things live to demonstrate what they're doing. Proctored, you use cameras. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can still happen to make sure the person is who you think they are. Ultimately, you're looking at, think always when you ask that question about someone sitting at his or her desk at work, and all the full range of tools is available to them. And you want them to be a better, more efficient, but also ethical worker. And you would want the same in the education setting. So one should prepare the person for the next. And it's not any of us, I don't think, who don't envision that certain amount of legal work or certain amount of accounting work is going to be done by generative AI in the future. It will. Does that mean there won't be accountants or there won't be lawyers, or we don't think they'll be the ones doing some of the work, or using generative AI in an ethical way to do the work better or more quickly? I lean towards the latter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it seems like it's about ethics and transparency. So I think those are two words there. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, John. First, I have to outro my co-host, who's right now, Bradley, you are officially a professional podcaster, just FYI. You did fantastic. So
because I learned from the best, Elvin.
Yeah, right. I appreciate that. Thanks. $10 on the way. So he is Bradley Emmy. He's the CTO at Pangram Labs. So thank you so much, Bradley. And then, of course, he is Dr. John Woods, Provost and Chief Academic Officer at the University of Phoenix. John, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both. Enjoyed it. Really great to be here today.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series, sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.